Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Edwin Noreña Gold-Washed Anaerobic Pink Bourbon from Vibrant Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. And Vibrant, based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, their first time appearing on this channel. And congratulations to Vibrant if you're watching. Wanted to give a huge congratulations to them, as this past week they opened their first ever cafe in Philadelphia, which is such a huge milestone for any business in any field. So that's a really exciting experience for them, and I wish them really well. As far as our experience with Vibrant goes, there's no background. We had only heard of them when we saw them on the Coffee Reddit, a community we're not overly active in. But Vibrant is pretty active in the Coffee Reddit, and a lot of people do discuss their coffee, and they discuss it with Vibrant as well. Most specifically and notably this coffee in particular, as they have been hyping this coffee, as well as a lot of people in the Reddit have been hyping this coffee, as one of the best and most interesting coffees that they have ever had. So we were pretty curious ourselves going into this, and then we also received a comment from Andrew, one of our subscribers, asking if we had heard of this roaster or if we had tried this coffee, and yeah, we had heard of both of them, we just never tried them, and we were curious ourselves given the hype surrounding this coffee. So we got what is some of the last of this coffee, as they no longer are roasting it. They still have some left in their brand new cafe if you wanted to fly out to Philly to try it. But yeah, this is a perfect opportunity to discuss them. This right here is day 16 of this coffee. And I did want to get one massive disclaimer out of the way. I don't drink a lot of beer. This coffee is very focused on beer. It's very beer-centric coffee. So it's going to be a very tricky and difficult review for myself, as I have very little experience with beer. It's going to be just hard. I wanted to get that out of the way before we start. So let's start. Recipe real quick. They have an interesting recipe. We did reach out to them, and this is what they suggested. I'm kind of interested, went with it, worked really well the first time, stuck with it. It's an 18:1 water to coffee ratio at 210 degrees Fahrenheit. And obviously we're not familiar with the roaster overall as a whole, so we don't know their typical roast profile, but this is on the lighter side of things. So we'll call it a light American for this specific coffee. And with that out of the way, let's start discussing the coffee itself. Day 7, our first experience, and what can we say? Just straight up tasted like an IPA beer. Everything from the bag itself, the coffee beans themselves, the ground, the bloom, the grounds, the bloom, all of it just radiates a very strong IPA beer-like smell, and the taste itself just as clear as day. This isn't subtle, and this is very direct. It just tastes like an IPA beer. Pretty interesting. Day 10, second time we tried it. Again, aroma from this coffee is just absolutely absurd in every facet. Radiates throughout the room. Very interesting. You can make the coffee, and then like 2-3 hours later, the room will still smell like an IPA beer. It is really intense. Coffee itself just radiates this very clear IPA hops taste to it. Day 11, coffee pretty consistent, still just mind-blowing every time. One of those things where you think to yourself, there's no way this coffee will taste this absurd, and then you try it and you go, okay, it's absolutely as absurd as I thought, and maybe even more so than I had thought. Arguably the most unique coffee flavor profile we've ever experienced. And then day 14, coffee is really consistent, so it's dying down ever so slightly, and while it was super intense at the start, still extremely intense, but just tapering off ever so slightly, both on day 14 and day 16. But for the most part, still just this ridiculously clean IPA beer taste that you're getting from the coffee. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting, and we did our very best with this tasting wheel because this is tricky. We don't know much about beer, and it's almost as if we're trying to analyze beer, as this coffee acts like a coffee, but it tastes way more like a beer. And it's basically trying to create a tasting wheel for a beer, which, I mean, we're miserable at, truth be told. But in terms of clarity, that's the thing that should jump out, because it's a level 5, and this is as clear and distinct as possible for a flavor profile. The finish, yeah, definitely a 5, because you will be tasting beer on your palate for 30 minutes or so. I mean, this coffee lingers eternally. Sweetness, level 4, because it is pretty sweet still. Florals, level 4, pretty high. Berry fruit, and this is one of those things that's kind of tricky. Is it a raspberry IPA? I honestly can't tell, but it kind of feels like it has some berries to it. So that's why we have that at level 5. Citrus fruit, we think hops are citrusy. But again, this is beer, so it's tricky, and that's why it's at level 5, because if it's a hopsy sort of citrus taste, then yeah, definitely level 5. Bitterness, in our experience, beer is a bitter thing, but this is, again, acting more like a coffee, tasting more like a beer. Level 2 seems good. And body, yeah, it's definitely lower on the body. So did our absolute best with this tasting wheel, especially given, yeah, it's kind of like making a beer tasting wheel, and we're terrible at that. But that's how we're going to leave it. Think if we have this right, it looks good. So that's the way we'll leave it. All right, our overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I mean, we have so many. First off, yes, this is by far the most unique, special, different cup of coffee we've ever had, and that can't be understated. Massive shout out to the farmer, the roaster, everybody that was involved in this coffee and making it taste the way it does. We have had some people that are kind of curious if maybe this has some altering to it because maybe it had some hops in the process at any point, and that's why this coffee tastes as distinct as it does. And unless we're told otherwise, we're just going to say that this is the way the coffee turned out for whatever reason. And that just makes it a very unique and special experience. As far as it goes for me, I mean, I don't like beer. I like IPAs even less than I like beer, so obviously not going to enjoy this coffee, but one thing I did really love about this coffee was the unique experience. This was by far worth it just because of how unique it was to have a coffee that tastes this much like beer. This isn't subtle. Again, we've said this before. It's as direct and in your face as possible. It just tastes like beer, straight up. Type of person we would suggest this coffee to, obviously anybody that does like beer, especially IPAs. I think this is perfect for you, but it's one of those coffees that is so unique of an experience that I think everybody would benefit from trying something like this, just to see how far out the flavor profile of a coffee can go. This is pretty absurd. But I think I'm going to leave it at that because, yeah, it's not going to be our best review in terms of how great we did overall, how accurate everything on here is, because it's just hard for us on this one specifically. But if you have by chance tried this coffee, would love to know your own thoughts and opinions of it. As, yeah, did you find it to be as crazy and wild as we did? Yeah, if you're enjoying the content though, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. But this right here has been a review of the Edwin Noreña Gold Washed Anaerobic Pink Bourbon from Vibrant Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.